what would be better than this evening to speak about our children that we have and our children to come. I asked Rabbi Berel, a good friend of mine, maybe today I shouldn't call him a friend, he's a big rabbi, but they still be friends. He should share with us a little bit of his experience, that Baruch Hashem has got a lot of experience in the idea of raising children, bringing up children, and I know I have a lot still what to learn, even though I started 25 years ago. Even after 25 years I have what to learn. So imagine you are just beginners, you really have a lot what to learn. So don't make my mistakes. Don't learn the hard way, let's learn the easy way. Thank you very much for listening. That's only my warm-up. This is Rabbi Berel. Please, if you have any questions, just let him finish, then we can have all the questions. Thank you very much.
Good Davach, Shua Tov. Thank you very much, Naftali. I think would echo his sentiments. One of the reasons that I'm trying to speak about parenting is to spare people from making the same mistakes that I have made. And maybe in looking further into it, I can keep myself from making more mistakes in the future. Because parenting is an extremely difficult job. Our children are very good teachers, but sometimes we're not such great students. What I usually try to do, and what I'll try to do tonight, is to convey some lessons that we have from the Torah in general and from the Rabbeim especially. And I know it's not a shir, it's a Melaveh Malkah, a beautiful food, a beautiful eilam, many faces that I recognize over here, and it's a privilege to be able to speak here. I'd like to sort of start from inside out, because according to the previous Rebbe, the first stage of parenting is a person working on him or herself. That in order to be able to influence others properly, so you have to be the one that's doing the influence. So if you yourself are out of balance in certain things, we'll put it that way, so it's likely to influence the children. And therefore, since every person is required, according to the Torah, to be working on their own self-improvement, according to the Rambam, it's one of the 613 mitzvahs that a person always has to be working on improving their midas and improving their personality. This is a lifetime task. So this is something which it becomes especially crucial when you're influencing children. To take that a step further, then the relationship between the husband and wife, it's also crucial. Because like it says in Chumash, V'hoyu l'basar echad, V'yodem achav, it says it became one flesh. How do they become one flesh? So Rashi explains through the children that the child has parts of the father, parts of the mother. So where is it that the husband and wife really become one flesh? Is in the child that came from both of them together. And there are many times that it could happen that, a husband and wife, they don't see eye to eye. I mean, this is the way Hashem created us. Ain't they the same Shabbos? People have different personalities, different ways of looking at things. And it's very... Oh, we have a child here. Can we make a demonstration? No. They don't see eye to eye necessarily on things. And it's also, men and women are very different. The Gemara says there's two different nations. It's like they're two different countries, two different cultures. Gemara says it didn't come from these modern books. He's from Mars or Venus. So it's it's a completely different, like different nations. So if they end up speaking this different language, we shouldn't be surprised. And different ways of looking at things. Also shouldn't be surprised, but everybody knows how important Shalom Bayis is. So, you want like this, and she wants like this, or he wants like this, and you give a little bit here and there, and that's good. I'm not against that. That's very important. But what happens sometimes is when the children are born, and then you say, listen, I'm willing to give up something for myself. But for the kids, I mean, if he's wrong, he's wrong. I got to take care of this. Or she's wrong, she's wrong. And sometimes things which are not communicated between a husband and wife, sometimes it can be with children, that they end up not speaking the same voice. The Rambam says in Hilchas Deis, where he speaks about personality traits, that you have, in every personality trait, you have two extremes. And then you have the point in the middle, which is the best place to aim. So I'll just give a little example of how this could end up working. Let's take a personality trait. Could somebody give me a personality trait? I mean, don't please give me the personality trait, but give me an example of personality trait. Somebody? Huh?
Stubborn.
Stubborn. Okay, fine. Stubborn. It's not fine, but anyway, it's a good example.
One extreme.
Fine example. Good. So let's say you have a person that is on the stubborn scale, is all the way over here. Let's take the stubborn scale, okay? Let's talk stubbornness. Let's take, just to make it easy to talk about, let's take a stubborn scale of 0 to 100. So you have the guy who's 100. Stubborn like an ox, just never changes his mind. Okay, then you have somebody that's on the 0 stubborn scale. What does somebody look like that's on the 0 stubborn scale? Huh? Pushover. No backbone whatever. No backbone whatsoever. So the person, what do you think? Well, I think like this, but maybe I think the opposite. Why do you think like that? You're wrong. Okay, I'm wrong. And the person, mamish, has no stance whatsoever. And then you have the person that's the 0 on the stubborn scale. Then you have the one that's 100 on the stubborn scale. Is it snowing outside? No. You look at the window, I see it's white outside. Must be dandruff. This person, no, it's snow. Snow, must be snow. No, nothing will change the person's mind. Okay, fine. So this, you have somebody, see, now imagine what happens. Usually, person 100 does not marry a person that's on 0. Unless there are many, many personality traits, they mesh on the other ones. But let's take a case now. He is 75. Okay? And she is 25. And the child is 50. Okay? So the child is not terribly stubborn, but the child has a stance, has a certain opinion on things. And now, the husband and wife, I don't want to use names as an example. I always end up bumping into somebody's name by accident. So we'll say Turdis and Zilpa. Is that okay? No Turdis here, Zilpa? Sorry, guys. Okay, anyway. So Turdis is a 75, and Zilpa is a 25, and the child is a 50. Now, you ask the mother, how's your child? And she says, this kid is so stubborn. I ask him to do this, I ask him to do that. Why is she looking at it like that? Because she's at 25, and the child, from where she's standing, the child's at 50, the child's towards the other extreme. Right? Of course, the father, you ask him, what about this child? What does the child say? Child has no backbone. Because the child's standing from 75, and the father's standing at 75, the child's at 50. So they're discussing a case, a certain incident happened, and the wife comes to the husband, and you say, our child, he's so stubborn. And he says, what do you mean he's so stubborn? He has no backbone. What he should have done was the following. Now, the child gets caught in the crossfire, and in reality, where's the child? The child's just fine. The child's fine, and the parents sometimes need the self-awareness to know that, he knows that he's a 75, he should be trying to work closer and working on his stubbornness. There's nothing wrong with having midas that need to be improved, personality traits that need to be improved. That's part of the human condition. Until you become a tzaddik, that's the name of the game. And if she knows that she's on a 25, and so then they have some awareness, and the child, they don't make mashug of the child. So that's why both the individual perspective that the parents have on themselves, and also how they work together in the marriage and the communication between them, has to be open, and how much that affects the child. A question is often asked: how's the person? Often what will end up happening, you'll ask Turdis, the father, are you stubborn? And what does he say? He says, I'm normal. The rest of the world is a bunch of people with no backbone. Yeah? Or you'll ask Zilpa, where are you? And she says, I'm right in the middle. And these men are always so stubborn. Or something like that. Something similar. So how do you get out of that? Because people, the nature of human beings is it's very difficult to get a perspective on yourself. The statement in the Talmud that a person can't pull themselves out of a pit. What are you supposed to do? You're down in a deep hole, you're going to pull yourself up by your hair. I mean, you're not going to go anywhere because you yourself are standing on the ground. You're going to pull yourself by your hair, you're not going to get anywhere. So this is something which says in Pirkei Avos, in fact, in the first chapter, Pirkei Avos says twice, Aseh l'charav. The Rebbe spoke about many, many times that a person should have a guide, a spiritual advisor, somebody that's not them, somebody that has a little bit of a perspective. He's supposed to tell a story about Melaveh Malkah. So the Rebbe once explained why you tell a story about Melaveh Malkah, because you're going from Shabbos into the week. Shabbos, you're on a big spiritual level, right? It comes to the week, then you're getting into the world of action. You tell stories of tzaddikim, so that helps take the tzaddikim. It wants to take the holiness of the Shabbos, the holiness down to real life in the week. So you tell a story of a tzaddik on Mitzvah Shabbos, it helps you make that transition. I was once by Fabrengen, and I remember hearing the Rebbe said, he was speaking very strongly about this, the necessity of everybody having a Sel Charav, having a personal advisor, and the Rebbe said that he got a letter from somebody that asked him to become his Rav. Why? He couldn't find anybody good enough to become his spiritual advisor. That's what the guy said, and the Rebbe was sort of smiling when he said this. He said that the Rebbe has to be his personal advisor, his Aseh l'charav, because nobody else is good enough to be his spiritual advisor. To give you an idea, the guy that wrote it later bragged to everybody. The Rebbe spoke about him by Fabrengen. You can understand what kind of guy this is. Anyway, he was in Eilam Ha'emes already, but that's what he was a very unusual character. The Rebbe said by Fabrengen that I answered him that I'm too busy, I'm sorry I can't do it. But if you can't find somebody that's higher than you, you should still take as a spiritual advisor. If you're a person that there's nobody higher than you, then at least take somebody lower than you, because the person is not you. And he has that one advantage that at least he's objective. Okay, so you're subjective, even though you might be taka so great. Anyway, he later said that he took his son as to be his spiritual advisor. That's the way it worked out. But the idea of objectivity and having someone else, being able to give advice is something which is very, very crucial at Pitera. Any questions or comments on what I said so far? A little too quiet here. I'm not sure whether it's digestion.
Take as a spiritual advisor. I didn't hear that. Son?
That's what he did. The idea is that most of us, all of us, don't have really too much of a problem finding somebody that's on a higher level than us. So, something which is very, very crucial for everybody to have. I have my Rav, and I'm sure Rabbi Perlstein does too. And this is something which is a necessity for every Jew. It says in Pirkei Avos. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Let me just give a couple of challenges that are that kids face that they didn't face in previous generations. And this is their challenges not only in their in every area of their life. Of course, being like a normal human beings, you have to grow up in a respectful, productive way in general as a human being, and then especially as Jews, Shem Reteira mitzvahs, more challenges. I once heard from a Rosh Yeshiva, came from Europe, and he said that his students, in the process of getting to yeshiva from school, come in contact with more tumah, with more spiritual impurity than a Jew that grew up in his shtetl saw in a lifetime. And the fact is, I mean, this struck me a few years ago, where I was, this is, it goes as the children grow and as the technology changes. I remember one of the children, I was trying to tell a story in Melaveh Malkah about something that happened. There was a mice with a balagala, a wagon driver, and these things were happening. And one of the younger kids couldn't understand. And one of the older children finally said, "You don't understand. It was a long time ago. They didn't even have fax machines then." And then the same thing happened a year later when somebody's downloading a file from, some sort of mirror, whatever they call it, site in China, and it's taking 3 minutes to download the file, and the child's saying, "Why is this taking so long?" like, hooking up to somebody's computer in China and it's like you're a little impatient here, to send a letter to China. How long does it take to send a letter to China? It's a different world, and therefore everything in the world literally is in the fingertips of our kids. Many of them, maybe you're ahead of the game, but by the time they grow up, they will know the technology possibly better than you. Okay? And whatever it is now, it's not becoming less. We can pretty much depend on that. And the entire world is literally at their fingertips. In addition, the moral fiber in the world is not really getting stronger in many respects. Things that were considered by the non-Jewish world to be outside the realm of normal behavior, today is considered to be the norm, or considered, if you oppose it or you think there's something wrong with it, you're a bigot, you're a racist, who knows what. And there are many, many challenges in what the children are seeing on the street. If somebody's coming, also somebody, let's say, is coming from a family where the family is not so committed to Torah mitzvahs. The grandfather, the grandmother, the cousins, the different family members. So it's a very, very difficult message. You speak to the children, and the children see, different things around them. They don't understand it. This is the cousin born to this family, and this, okay, so they didn't go to yeshiva, or they did go to yeshiva. Whatever the case is very confusing for the child. Children, just like adults, learn much more from people than they do from books. So when they go to school, they go to yeshiva, they go to Beis Rivka, wherever they're going to school, and they learn certain things, but it doesn't mean it's going to influence their life. They don't see people acting like that. They learn much more from the way we act than from what they hear. So you can speak, for example, this is a very common thing. You can speak to children about being honest, for example, and then it comes, you go on a trip, and you're coming to Chais, I don't know, the museum or whatever the place is, and you're going in to get admission into whichever place it is, and then you get to the checkout line, and the 10-year-old child, you say you're 8. And then the kid, of course, says, what, 8? And the lady behind the counter, is rolling her eyes back in her head. Okay, so I'm not talking about the Shulchan Aruch, what the Shulchan Aruch says about that you can probably guess. But as far as the upbringing of the child, what are you saying? You're saying that when it comes to talking, talk high. But when it comes to action, act what pays off. So then when the child behaves like that, and the child is not keeping the moral standards, so what happens? It's a moral... So the parents draw their line here. Okay? And you draw the same line for the child, but the child says that the lines are fluid. So what they're being told, you don't necessarily act that way. So if that's the case, when the child doesn't act that way, and then the parents respond to the child, so then the child doesn't really understand what happened. Why in this case it's okay, this way it's not okay. The Rebbe quoted a number of times the famous statement from Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. The Rabbi Yehuda Chassid said that when it comes to speaking to children, you have to be extremely, extremely careful to always tell them the absolute truth. It's extremely damaging to a child not to tell them the truth. You have to tell them the emes. Now, you have to tell them the emes. Now, when it comes to your actions, how can you act perfectly? So unless you're a Beinoni, you don't act perfectly. So people like me, we're not Beinonim. So we can live with the concept of imperfection. We know that a tzaddik, even a Beinoni, we learn in Tanya, is somebody that's perfect in everything that they do. A tzaddik doesn't even want to do something that's not perfect. But a Beinoni could want to do something that's not perfect, but doesn't live up to it. So what happens is, you knew this already, and I don't really need to tell you, but you understand that if you act, the more imperfect you are, the more difficult the upbringing of your child's going to be. We all make mistakes. The Frierdiker Rebbe speaks, and this is something which is a misconception that many people have, and if I'd like to clear the air, because it's really amazing what he writes, because people think that what's the old, true Jewish way of education? Take a stick, and you hold it over there, and the child misbehaves. None of this mushy, social psychology, Dr. Spock stuff over here. Spoiled kids. That's for sissies and soft-brained social scientists. Okay, we are into the real thing, and we have the truth as it came from Sinai, and let's just say it the way it is and enforce it. And if you have to scream sometimes, you scream. And a patch from here to here and there really doesn't, what's so terrible? The many good Jews grew up with getting patched.
We'll be right back after these messages.
That was a planned musical interlude. Bit of comic relief. Where was I?
The patching.
The patching. Come over. And they say, and you look at what happened to you have a generation of psychologists who have told people that the way to bring up your children, you have to be their friend, and you have to be on a first-name basis, and you have to sit on the floor with them, and you have to be on their same level. Now, there's nothing wrong with sitting on the floor with your child and playing with your child. Don't get me wrong. But the children don't want to have their parent be a child. Children need parents. This might sound revolutionary. Okay? But they want siblings too. Okay? And they want to play with them. But they don't want the parents to be the siblings. Okay? They want the parents to be parents. And when those lines were broken, so then some people think that that's going too far, and I would agree with that. But on the other hand, the converse of that does not be to be a strict, authoritarian screamer. Okay, the previous Rebbe says, I'm going to have to give an introduction to the statement, so it shouldn't come out to be too harsh. Okay, we are not perfect. It's not a secret to anybody, and we all make mistakes. Okay, it's not a mistake. Just by saying you make a mistake and you say, what do you want from me? I'm not perfect. Okay, fine, you're not perfect, but your mistake was a mistake. Okay, we'll try better next time to correct the mistakes. You have to know. Nobody's saying that you can't ever scream at your child. Well, you shouldn't. Why? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay, it's a mistake. Now, you're going to make mistakes probably. And I make mistakes. Okay, but it doesn't make the mistake not a mistake. The previous Rebbe says that if you're frustrated with the child, and then you yell, okay, it's going to work. It's going to work 1,000% temporarily, but it is going to have a negative effect in the long run, and therefore it's not chinuch. Because what's going to happen is the relationship between the one on the giving end of the scream and the receiving end of the scream is going to be damaged. And that damage is going to last longer than the short-term effect. So if Yankee is pulling Shmuli's hair, okay, and you come over there and you give it to Yankee over the head, and Yankee lets Shmuli's hair go and starts crying. Okay? Depending on the age of Shmuley, he might also be crying because he doesn't realize who's being, aside from the fact that his hair's getting pulled. But even if it wasn't getting pulled, so what? He might think he's being, small children, you scream, they cry anyway. It could be screaming at somebody else. They just cry out of empathy or something. I don't know exactly what they think. They're being cried at, being yelled at, so they cry too. Whatever the case is. But forget about it. Okay, Shmuley's okay. His hair's still there. And Yankee is crying. Okay, Yankee, leave Shmuley alone for the rest of the hour. It'll be a whole hour. Shmuley's now safe. Actually, Shmuley's safe as long as you're in the room. Then, of course, as soon as you leave the room, Yankee looks at Shmuley as the one that caused him to be yelled at by Mommy or Tati. So this is not my brother Shmuley. This is the cause of why I was yelled at. This is not good news for Shmuley. But aside from that, that's even if you do a calmer sort of punishment, he's not going to be too favorably disposed to Shmuley anyway, and probably wasn't to begin with. Why else is he pulling his hair? Okay, but so whatever you're going to work with Yankee or Shmuley is one thing. The question is, you and Yankee, when you yelled. So if you want to guide Yankee in his development, okay, the closeness is crucial. So it doesn't mean you can't yell at somebody and be close to them. And especially children are very forgiving. But you understand, the closer the bond, the more effective the intervention. I just saw tonight on the Living Torah, I don't know if you play it over here, they have the segments, they have little sichos from the Rebbe, and there was somebody that came to the Rebbe, Tavshim Mem Tes. I actually know him. It was very, very interesting. I have a picture of him before he grew a beard and everything. He came to the Rebbe, and they had a picture, and he asked the Rebbe, how can he develop sincere fear of Hashem? That it should really be internalized and it shouldn't just be superficial. And the Rebbe said that the main thing to be concentrated on is love rather than fear. He says, when you look at the Shema, it starts off with love. It starts off with ahava. After you have the ava, so then the yira, the fear will come automatically. The awe, the fear, whatever it is, will come automatically. But the main relationship is created through ava, is created with love. And this is not something which was invented by the modern psychologists. This we have from Rabbi and Nesiyenu, and this is the derech of Torah, and this is the derech of Torah Chassidus. And this is the way to strengthen the relationship. And the more that's weakened, the less effective a mechanech you'll be. So therefore, when it comes the second time around, okay, so it doesn't mean you have to throw up your hands. You lost your temper. Everybody loses their temper. So you lost your temper and you yelled. Okay, but the next time it's going to be more difficult to have that intervention. One of the things about anger is that it's extremely addictive. And by the way, there are physiologists that say that actually chemically it's addictive. And you can imagine this a bit, because what happens when you get angry, the body secretes hormones, and people feel powerful. You know, like people sometimes feel powerless, nobody listens to them, and you know, they think things, and suddenly you start screaming, and suddenly everybody backs off. All the people that were nudging you, find you give one good scream over there, you give a holler. Should I do one? No. And suddenly everybody behaves. Whoa! Don't start up. You feel very powerful. And chemically, it's something which changes inside a person. A person, you know, they need a little pickup, you know, so they can become alcoholics, God forbid, and, you know, take alcohol, or they can have chemicals within them that they can inspire with anger. But also behaviorally, if you want to control someone else's behavior, and you find...
A blunt intervention impossible.
Huh? Impossible is right. Who's going to do the percussion here? We have a whole orchestra here. It's the orchestra pit. They put me next to the orchestra pit. Okay, I can take a hint. We're almost finished. Anyway. In any case, the yachsim, the interactions, the more things are thought out before, the more effective they will be. And in fact, the more sure you can be as a parent of what you're doing. There's an excellent book that I would recommend. I'm actually giving classes on it on Sunday nights in Nusachari for the men. Whoever's interested is invited. Klolei Chinuch V'Adracha from the previous Rebbe. Actually, an amazing, amazing work. It's written not specifically for parents, but everything there applies to parents in terms of Chinuch V'Adracha, that's bringing up a younger generation. And one of the primary points that he says there is that before you can decide to set goals for a youngster, you have to understand the individual traits of that child very, very well. And think, what's the best thing for this particular child? What fits this particular child? And then think about the best way to accomplish what it is you want to do. And think it through, and then re-examine it, and before you present it to the child, make sure that this is the best thing to be working on right now. Okay? The more you do that, the more confident you are with what you're doing. You know, sometimes you decide something, and it happens to me all that you make something which is a request from the child, and you thought it was reasonable, but in reality it's not. It's either too little or it's too much for this particular child. So then you have to change. If, I'm talking about myself, if I would have thought about it more, and I would have checked it out more with the child and spoken with the child more, maybe I would have gotten closer to what was proper. And the more you think about it, so then the less you have to back off. So what happens is if you ask for something which you realize yourself was unreasonable to ask for the child. So what are you going to do? You ask for something it was improper. Maybe it was too much, maybe it was too little. Okay? Then what are you going to do? You realize it was the wrong thing to ask for. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to stick to it. Well, it depends whether you're tortoise or a silper. What should you do?
Re-examine?
Re-examine, yeah? Back off. You demanded this, it was too much, you back off. But then what's the problem? What's going to happen the next time you have something from the child? What's the child going to do? Yeah, exactly. I'll examine it too. Let's wait for Tati to change his mind, like he did last time. Okay, so why should I listen? So then you don't want that to happen, so what are you going to do? So you're going to be stubborn if you do something wrong? So then you're going to ask for something unreasonable, and it's also not going to happen. So, anybody getting discouraged here? It's parenting is a very, you have to have a lot of help from above, a lot of siyata d'shmaya, but the more the husband and wife talk together about what's the best thing for their children, and each one has a different perspective on the child has a different relationship with the mother as opposed to the relationship with the father, and both have a unique, even though in many cases the mother spends more time with the child and therefore knows the child better, but there are certain things that the father will say, and only when they communicate and get all perspectives on the child, they can figure out what's the best thing. And when you have that relationship, when it's a positive relationship, the more effort that's put in, and especially at a young age, talking about Tu B'Shvat before, but I've said many times that when you have a tree that's growing, the smaller the tree, the younger the tree, the more difference your interventions have. So if somebody would make a little scratch on a tree when it's very, very small, so then it grows up, becomes a gigantic tree, so then you got a big scratch in the tree like this. You have a big grown tree, you make a little scratch in it and nobody notices. And so too, in the formative years of a child, it's one of the reasons it says that kashrus, it says the children are not even bar bas mitzvah. Why should you be so careful in kashrus? The Rebbe writes you have to be more careful with the children than you do with the adults, because their actual physical body is being formed from what they eat. And it also says in Chassidus, the Rebbe writes in the Igros, that the personality characteristics are also impacted by the food the child eats. I've even said that before cooking, you should have a pushka in your kitchen. One of the eros from the Rebbe, you should have a pushka in your kitchen, preferably attached to the wall. And who's ever cooking the food, before cooking the food, give some tzedakah, and having in mind that it should help that your children should have good midas. Because when you are showing good midas by giving tzedakah, by giving some charity before cooking the food, so this is itself, I mean, even there's a spiritual effect obviously in this, but even Pashat Begashmias, imagine if you think that before you're cooking the food, so that's going to make your cooking different, it's going to make your chinuch different also, that everything you're doing, trying to improve the upbringing of the children. And in this you have to have practical goals. There's a famous story that's told about the previous Rebbe. He writes about his father. When he was a child, his mother once gave him some watermelon. It's a well-known story. It's printed a few places. And he had his friends over there under a tree. They were sitting down and playing. And he took some of the watermelon, cut into pieces, and gave it to his friends. His father, the Rebbe Rashab, was looking through the window, and he called them in. And he told them, I saw that when you shared the watermelon with your friends, you weren't doing it b'teiv ayin. You weren't doing it generously. You were doing it begrudgingly, the way you shared. And he spoke to him about how important the quality of teiv ayin is, about being generous, and how maybe more concerned about other people than yourself. And the previous Rebbe started crying, and he cried so thoroughly that he vomited up the watermelon that he ate. And his mother, the Rebbe Rashab's wife, Rebbe Sarah, she said, "What do you want from him? He's only a child." And the Rebbe Rashab answered that it's worth it, that it should implant in him a good midah. It's a famous story. What do we take out of this story? So, I think the answer is very little. And I'll tell you why. Because this is how you bring up a Rebbe. Okay? The Rebbe Rashab had one Ben Yachid, one child, who was given a neshama which was the only neshama like this in the entire generation. This was a neshama that had to be so selfless. They would put everything he had, his physical essence, his spiritual essence, he had to be prepared to give it away to Klal Yisrael. He had to make war against the Russian government, not only to give up his own life. As the Frierdiker Rebbe, he sent chassidim on different missions, knowing that he was putting their lives in danger, and not only putting their lives in danger, the Taka, many of them got killed. So how do you do that for somebody else? The Mesiras Nefesh for yourself is one thing, but you Meser other people's Nefesh. And they did it willingly, obviously. But to do such a thing, he said, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, it was the most difficult thing a person could possibly do. To raise a person like that, you need a very unusual upbringing. Okay? That we take these things as lessons how to bring up our children could be extremely damaging to a child. It's not something to be applied. He brings an example there, the previous Rebbe, not in the story, in Klal Chinuch V'Adracha. He says when you're bringing up a baby, you have a newborn baby. So what do you give the baby? You give a little formula, diluted. You give a bati. Okay? Then you have somebody who's a lumberjack and he goes out and he cuts wood in the forest. What do you give him? Meat, potatoes, soup, bread. Okay? Now imagine the lumberjack is going out to work. He comes back to eat and you give him a bati. Or in the morning, he's going out to work, he's going out to cut trees. Okay, he wants to eat breakfast, here's a bati. One drop of milk, diluted in water. Okay, the guy's going to pass out in the forest. Then you're going to take the baby, and you say, if it's good for the lumberjack, you switch the meals. Yeah, so the baby, we want the baby to grow up faster. So you give the baby a bowl of chocolate. Okay, I don't know what's going to happen to this baby. So obviously, So you could do the same thing in upbringing. And even in aiming, not only in Yiras Shamayim, demanding things, high levels of the child, but in Midas also, you have to be on such an extreme in this thing, and the child is not holding on such a level. Not only age-wise, maybe this is not for this child, it's just too much to demand. It's like giving the baby a bowl of meat. And on the other hand, if the child needs more challenge and should be working further and going from level to level, whether it's derech eretz, whether it's chesed, whatever it is that they're supposed to be developing, doing away with stubbornness, whatever the case is. So if you don't demand too much, you have to give the child something appropriate. Don't give only a little bati. The child should be given challenges and should be encouraged to advance and to be rewarded for doing so. Anyway, I think this is more than enough talking. I'm willing to take questions now. Yes, or comments. The title to disagree with anything else. But anyway, questions, please. Yes.
Well, many experts in Chinuch saying about this double standard, giving us this information how we should pass in the border and saying the border to my child all the truth, but we know that the world is contaminating many things. Many of them, they don't give a real solution for today's world, how to solve this problem. Would you give your solution? I mean, not only by double standard, by cash, by many things.
I'll tell you a story I once heard from an educator. She was in the store, and she was in the checkout line of the store. So, in front of her was a mother with a child, And of course, what do they do when you get to the checkout counter in the supermarket? What do they have over there when you're stuck in line standing there? What do they have over there? Child height? Candy. Candy. Right over there. They don't put it on this level. They have on this level too for the adults, but they have right over there for the kids. So what does the child say? The child says, want a candy. And the mother says, okay, Junior, whatever his name was. You know, we said, I'm taking you along, you know, we talked about this before, that you're not going to ask for a candy. I want a candy. Junior, remember we discussed it before, we made up, no more of this, you know, we remember what happened last time, and I said I'm not taking you anymore. You have to agree not to ask for any candies. We're just not going to have any candies now. I want a candy. Now, you know, you're embarrassing yourself and you're embarrassing me, and we made up, and a deal is a deal. Candy! And this goes on until finally the kid is crying and screaming on the floor, I want a candy! I want a... Screaming away on the floor, I want a candy. And finally the mother says, I made somebody cry. That was Shmuley, yeah.
You want candy?
He wants a candy also. So finally the mother says, okay, here's your candy, but this is the last time. So she said, this woman, she's a very, very talented educator. She said, I felt like going to the mother and said, you did an excellent job of educating. You just have the wrong objective. You don't get it. What she did, she taught the child that if you want a candy, throw a tantrum. She taught it perfectly. If you would want to teach somebody that, how would you teach it? If they speak nicely, don't give them the candy. If they even scream, don't give them the candy.
Give him a punch.
Okay. It might be a better idea to leave them home. If you say that you're going to leave them home, then leave them home. Child's not going to leave it home. Don't give them the candy. Don't give them the chance to do that. So you're asking a question, what happens if in the real world, okay, that you're going to have to act dishonestly? Okay, so